What kind of plant was once worth more than gold? Used in royal temples, sacred medicines, and love rituals for thousands of years. Yet modern science now believes it may genuinely help lift the human spirit. Tonight, we're exploring the luminous world of saffron. Welcome to the Green Room Apothecary, a place where plants are more than remedies or medicine. They're remembered wisdom, a part of our collective living history. Step into the garden with me to explore the history, folklore, and science behind the herbs that have shaped human healing for centuries. Whether you're here to learn something new, to unwind, or to gently drift off to sleep, I'm so happy that you're here with me. I'm your host, Nimue, and this is where ancient wisdom meets modern life. Before we begin, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from and what time of day it is for you. And if saffron has ever found its way into your life, in a dish, a tea, a little glass jar of crimson threads, I'd love to hear about it. In this episode, we'll trace saffron's extraordinary story through history and science. But let's arrive here first, with the plant, with presence. Wherever you are, take a moment to settle. Unclench your hands. Soften your eyes. Let your breath slow just a little. Now, imagine you're standing in a field at the edge of dawn. The sky is still low and pale, that particular gray-blue light just before the sun clears the horizon. The air is cool and dry. There's a slight frost on the ground beneath your feet. And all around you, crocuses. Thousands of them. Purple and lilac, small and perfect, rising up from the bare soil. This is what saffron looks like before it becomes what you know it as. Crouch down. Gently cup one flower in your hands, careful not to crush it. Look inside. There, at the center, rising from the petals like 3 tiny flames, 3 vivid red threads. Not orange, not pink, red. The deep, specific red of something rare and irreplaceable. Now, bring the flower close. Take a slow breath in. There it is. Something warm and faintly honeyed, slightly metallic, like sunlight distilled into something you can inhale. There's nothing quite like it. Stay here for a moment. Breathing in, breathing out. Now think about what it took to bring this to you. Every thread, hand-picked at dawn, in a narrow window of hours before the flowers close. 90,000 flowers for one small jar of saffron. There's something in that labor, that devotion that really matters. This plant has been tended this way for 4,000 years. When you're ready, let the image soften, but carry that feeling of rarity with you, the feeling of something treasured that is worth the effort and time. Today, we're going deep into saffron, the most expensive spice on earth, and one of the oldest medicines in human history. We'll travel from prehistoric cave paintings and Minoan frescoes, through the Persian royal courts and the medieval spice wars, all the way into modern clinical trials that show saffron performing similarly to antidepressants. And we'll look at why this tiny red thread, worth more by weight than gold in some eras, keeps earning its value. Before we understand what saffron does inside the body, we have to understand what it has meant to the people who harvested it, burned it, wore it, traded it, and treated it as sacred for thousands of years. So let's step back, further back than you might expect. Saffron comes from Crocus sativus, a small autumn-blooming crocus in the family Iridaceae, making it a relative of irises rather than any other culinary herb. It's a triploid plant, which means it has 3 sets of chromosomes instead of 2. And because of this genetic quirk, it can't reproduce on its own. It produces no viable seeds. Every single saffron plant that exists was planted by a human hand, from a corm divided and replanted by another human hand. This plant cannot exist without us. It never could. The relationship is, in a literal botanical sense, obligate, inseparable, thousands of years old and still entirely dependent on human intention. From each flower, only 3 stigmas, those vivid crimson threads, are harvested. It takes approximately 90,000 to 170,000 flowers to produce just 1 kilogram of dried saffron. The harvest window is achingly short. The crocus blooms for 2 to 3 days each autumn, and the flowers must be gathered before sunrise, before the petals open fully and the precious oils begin to fade. The name saffron traces through Old French saffron to the Arabic za'afaran, meaning yellow, a nod to the extraordinary golden dye it produces. In Persian, it was called zarparan, meaning having golden stigmas. In ancient Greece, it was called krokos, gold by any other name, in every language. And perhaps more than almost any other herb we've explored so far, saffron has always existed at the threshold between medicine and luxury, between devotion and desire, between the earthly and the sacred. For thousands of years, saffron has carried an almost mythical reputation. Not only because of its medicinal value, but because of how rare and labor-intensive it is to produce. Each tiny crimson thread is the stigma of a single crocus flower, harvested carefully by hand, often in the earliest hours of the morning. And it can take tens of thousands of flowers to create just a single pound. And because of that, saffron became more than an herb. It became a symbol of sunlight, of wealth, of vitality, of sensuality, of divine abundance. In ancient Persia, Greece, India, and parts of the Middle East, saffron was associated with celebration, royalty, sacred ritual, and altered states of emotion. It was infused into wines, perfumes, oils, ritual baths, and ceremonial garments. Kings wore it. Temples burned it. Lovers scattered it across marriage beds. And over time, saffron developed a strong reputation in folk magic and green witchcraft as a plant of joy, attraction, prosperity, sensuality, confidence, solar energy, creativity, and sacred pleasure. Unlike many protective herbs, which often feel earthy or defensive, saffron carries a brighter, more radiant kind of magic. It's less about shielding and more about illumination. Historically, saffron was often worked into spells or rituals intended to draw abundance, admiration, vitality, artistic inspiration, and emotional warmth. In some traditions, saffron-infused water was sprinkled through the home to invite prosperity and happiness. In others, saffron was added to charm bags, ritual oils, or baths intended to increase magnetism, confidence, or romantic attraction. And there's something deeply fitting about that, because even the color of saffron feels alive. That deep gold and orange hue has long connected it symbolically to the sun. Astrologically, saffron is most strongly associated with the sun and the sign of Leo. And you can feel that correspondence almost immediately. Saffron carries warmth, visibility, radiance, creative life force. Like Leo energy, it has a relationship with the heart, self-expression, pleasure, artistry, and the courage to fully inhabit one's own presence. Some herbal astrologers also connect saffron secondarily to Jupiter because of its long-standing associations with abundance, expansion, wisdom, and fortune. And medicinally, that symbolism becomes even more interesting, because modern research suggests saffron may genuinely help elevate mood, soften depressive symptoms, and support emotional resilience, almost as though the folklore surrounding it has quietly echoed into the science itself. In tarot, saffron aligns beautifully with the Sun card, not simply because of its color, but because of its energetic quality. The Sun in tarot represents vitality, joy, illumination, truth, warmth, clarity, and a life fully expressed. It's the card of stepping out from shadow and back into light, and saffron feels very much like that. A plant associated not with retreat, but with return. A return to color, to appetite, to sensuality, to aliveness. Some practitioners also associate saffron with strength, not because it's forceful, but because it embodies a softer kind of power. Warmth maintained through difficulty, beauty cultivated carefully over time. And perhaps that's part of saffron's enduring magic. Not just that it's rare, but that humans have continued for thousands of years to believe that joy itself is worth cultivating with extraordinary care. Flower by flower, thread by thread, as though sunlight could be harvested from the earth and gently held in the palm of your hand. Saffron's story begins farther back than written language. Traces of saffron pigment have been found in prehistoric cave paintings in what is now called Iraq. On the island of Santorini in Greece, Minoan frescoes dating back 3,500 years depict women gathering crocus flowers. Figures dressed in embroidered crocus motifs adorned with necklace made of crocus stamens, offering the blooms in ritual gesture. In one extraordinary image, a woman places her wounded foot upon a crocus flower, already reaching towards this plant for healing. 3,500 years ago, before Greece had written words for it, saffron is mentioned in the Hebrew Bible in the Song of Solomon among the most beautiful passages in the Old Testament. It appears alongside cinnamon, nard, and calamus as one of the finest, most desirable scents on earth. From the very beginning, saffron occupied a category all its own. Not merely useful, but precious, sacred, worthy of a song. The heart of saffron's ancient world was Persia, what is now Iran, which still produces approximately 85% of the world's saffron today. Persian royalty used saffron in everything, in their bathwater, in their food, woven into their robes and carpets, burned as incense in temples and palaces. It was a dye, a fragrance, a currency, a medicine, and a mark of divine favor all at once. The great Persian polymath Avicenna, writing in the 11th century in his monumental Canon of Medicine, documented saffron's therapeutic properties with remarkable specificity. He used it as an analgesic, an anti-inflammatory, a mood elevator, and a cardiac tonic. He even used it combined with wine as an anesthetic in surgical procedures. Here is a physician, 1,000 years ago, using a spice as pain relief for surgery. And he was right. The Greeks called it krokos, and they wove it into their mythology. The most famous tale is the story of Crocus and Smilax. Crocus was a beautiful young mortal, radiant, devoted, who fell deeply in love with the nymph Smilax. But Smilax did not return his love. And when the gods saw his unending devotion, they transformed him, out of either mercy or cruelty, depending on which version you read, into a flower, the saffron crocus. 3 crimson stigmas were where his heart had been. In another telling, the god Hermes was said to have been born in a field of saffron. The 3 stigmas were believed to represent the 3 fates, those ancient weavers who controlled the thread of every human life. Fitting for a plant whose medicine threads through the nervous system. The Romans adored it. The goddess Venus was said to perfume her baths with it. Roman emperors had it scattered in the streets and theaters for festivals. Nero reportedly had his entire processional route strewn with saffron when he entered Rome. Wealthy Romans used saffron-soaked wristbands to perfume themselves throughout the day, the Roman equivalent of a personal scent diffuser. Saffron's arrival in medieval Europe is largely credited to the Moors, who brought it to the Iberian Peninsula during their expansion in the 8th century. From Spain, it spread through France, Italy, Switzerland, and eventually England, where the Essex town of Saffron Walden still carries its name. In the 14th century, as the Black Plague ravaged the continent, demand for saffron exploded. It was believed, not without reason, given its anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties, to offer protection. Prices rose so steeply that thieves began hijacking saffron shipments. This escalated into what historians call the Saffron War of 1374, a months-long conflict in Basel, Switzerland, triggered by a group of noblemen who stole an 800-pound shipment of saffron from a merchant caravan. The saffron was ransomed, negotiations dragged on for weeks, all over a spice. And when something is worth fighting a war over, it's worth understanding. Across cultures, saffron carried a spiritual charge that went far beyond the physical. In Hinduism, saffron, the color as much as the spice, is sacred. Hindu monks and holy men wear saffron robes as a symbol of renunciation and spiritual purity. Lord Brahma, the creator, is depicted wearing saffron. The color represents the sacred fire, the divine light, and the quest for illumination. In Tibetan Buddhism, saffron dyes the robes of monks for similar reasons. The golden orange hue is a constant, wearable reminder of the path toward enlightenment. In Islamic tradition, saffron is spoken of as a gift brought to earth by the prophet Adam. It symbolizes wisdom and divine blessing. In European folk magic, saffron was used in love spells and divinatory rites. Tudor women brewed it into their potions to reveal their future husbands in dreams. It was carried as a charm for fertility and luck, for the lifting of melancholy. And in Persian mythology, saffron is associated with the sun itself, its gold and light, its warmth, its power to resurrect what was dormant and cold. In traditional Chinese medicine, saffron is known as honghua, red flower, and it's classified as a blood mover. It targets the heart and liver meridians, dispersing stagnant blood, lifting what TCM calls liver qi stagnation, that frustrating, congested feeling of emotion with nowhere to go. It's used for menstrual irregularity, depression, and heart conditions. In Ayurveda, saffron is considered sattvic, a quality that promotes clarity, love, and compassion. It's classified as a medya herb, a brain tonic, and is revered for its ability to nourish the nervous system and elevate the mind. It's used for anxiety, grief, menstrual pain, and to support fertility. In Ayurvedic tradition, a small amount of saffron in warm milk at night is a classic preparation for emotional nourishment. In Unani medicine, the tradition built on Avicenna's work, saffron is called zaffran and classified as mufera, a heart-rejoicing herb. Used for melancholia, for headache, for nervous weakness, for low libido, a medicine for the spirit as much as the body. Across 4,000 years, in every major healing tradition on earth, one thing repeats. Saffron lifts what is heavy. Saffron warms what has gone cold. Saffron brings the light back. And now, remarkably, clinical science is confirming it. For thousands of years, saffron has been described as a medicine for the sad, the heavy-hearted, the grief-stricken. Avicenna prescribed it for depressive mood. Persian physicians called it a heart-rejoicing herb. Ayurvedic healers said it brought sattva, the quality of light and love, back to a clouded mind. Modern science has spent decades asking, is any of this real? And the answer is yes. And the depth of that yes is remarkable. Let's step into the lab. The medicinal power of saffron lives primarily in 3 compounds: crocan, crocetin, and saffronol. Crocan is the compound responsible for saffron's extraordinary color, that vivid crimson that bleeds into golden yellow when dissolved in water. It's a carotenoid glycoside, and it's both a potent antioxidant and, as research increasingly shows, a genuine antidepressant compound. Crocetin is a form of crocan, meaning crocan breaks down into the body to release crocetin, which can cross the blood-brain barrier, and that is a critical part. Crocetin reaches the brain directly and influences neurotransmitter system at the source. Saffronol is the volatile compound responsible for saffron's distinctive aroma, that warm, slightly earthy, honeyed scent. It has sedative, anxiolytic, and anticonvulsant properties. And together, these 3 compounds form one of the most pharmacologically complex profiles of any culinary herb in existence. Here's where the science becomes genuinely extraordinary. Multiple randomized control trials, the gold standard of clinical research, have tested saffron against placebo and against pharmaceutical depressants for the treatment of mild to moderate depression. The standard therapeutic dose used in these studies is 30 milligrams per day of saffron extract, taken in 2 divided doses. In study after study, saffron significantly outperformed placebo on validated depression scales, including the Hamilton Depression Rating Scale. And more strikingly, in direct head-to-head trials, saffron performed comparably to fluoxetine, commonly known as Prozac. In one 8-week randomized trial, 85% of participants in the saffron group showed complete response, compared to 80% in the fluoxetine group. The difference was not statistically significant, meaning saffron and Prozac performed essentially the same, with one key difference. The saffron group reported virtually no adverse side effects. A 2015 systematic review concluded that saffron was as effective as fluoxetine for treating mild to moderate depression and recommended for further investigation. A more recent meta-analysis of clinical trials published in 2019 confirmed these findings across multiple populations. And important reminder here, I am an herbalist and your host, not a doctor, and I want to be clear, this is not me telling you to throw away your prescription. It's me telling you that the ancient understanding of saffron as a medicine for grief and melancholy has been placed under a microscope, and it held up, and that matters. So, what is saffron actually doing in the brain? Researchers have identified several mechanisms, and they work together in a way that's almost poetic in its completeness. First off is serotonin support. Crocan and saffronol appear to help the brain hold on to serotonin a little longer, the same general pathway targeted by many antidepressants. Instead of serotonin being cleared away too quickly, more of it remains available for the nervous system to work with. The mood lifts, and the edges of the world soften slightly. It also offers support for motivation, pleasure, and energy. Saffron doesn't seem to work just through one pathway. Research suggests it may also influence dopamine and norepinephrine, two neurotransmitters deeply connected to motivation, drive, focus, pleasure, and vitality, which may help explain why people often describe saffron as supporting not only mood, but a renewed sense of energy and emotional brightness. It also has neuroprotective effects. Some compounds within saffron also interact with glutamate receptors involved in mood regulation and brain plasticity, the brain's ability to adapt, heal, and form new pathways. This is one of the reasons researchers are so interested in saffron's potential effects on emotional resilience and long-term brain health. It also helps with stress response regulation. Saffron appears to help regulate the body's stress response system, particularly the hormonal cascade responsible for cortisol production. In simpler terms, it may help the body react to stress less intensely, easing some of the constant physiological pressure modern life places on the nervous system. What we're looking at is not a plant that works through one single mechanism and stops there. It's a plant that seems to move through several interconnected systems at once, supporting mood, stress response, energy, and emotional resilience simultaneously, and doing so with a kind of gentleness that has fascinated both herbalists and modern researchers. Saffron has a particularly remarkable relationship with the female hormonal cycle, one that traditional healers recognized long before researchers could explain it. Clinical trials have now confirmed that saffron significantly reduces the psychological and physical symptoms of premenstrual syndrome, PMS. In one study, 15 milligrams of saffron taken twice daily for 2 menstrual cycles reduced PMS severity by 50% in 75% of participants. The mechanism appears to involve saffron's effect on serotonin, whose natural fluctuations across the menstrual cycle are directly tied to mood changes, irritability, and emotional sensitivity in the luteal phase. Saffron also has a traditional and now clinically supported role in reducing cramping through its anti-spasmodic and anti-inflammatory effects. For centuries, Ayurvedic and Unani practitioners prescribed a small pinch of saffron in warm milk for women navigating difficult cycles. Modern research suggests that they were treating the hormonal neurological interface with remarkable precision. Saffron's effects appear to extend far beyond mood and the nervous system. For the heart and cardiovascular system, compounds like crocin and crocetin have showed the ability to support healthy blood pressure, reduce oxidative stress, and help protect delicate heart tissue from damage, which makes Avicenna's use of saffron as a cardiac tonic feel far less mystical and much more like careful observation passed down through generations. And when it comes to cognitive health, the research is especially fascinating. Early studies in people experiencing mild cognitive decline have found that saffron supplementation may help support memory, focus, and overall cognitive performance. Researchers believe that this may come from saffron's antioxidant protection of neurons, along with its influence on neurotransmitters involved in learning and memory. There's also growing interest in saffron's potential role in eye health. Some of its compounds appear to help protect the retina from oxidative damage, and early clinical studies have shown promising results in people with age-related macular degeneration. And perhaps that's one of the most remarkable things about saffron. The more scientists study it, the more this tiny crimson flower seems to appear everywhere at once, supporting the heart, the mind, the nervous system, even the eyes, quietly weaving itself through the body in ways ancient herbalists seemed to recognize long before modern laboratories ever existed. Saffron has a surprisingly strong safety profile at both culinary and therapeutic doses. In clinical studies using around 30 milligrams per day, side effects have generally been mild and uncommon, usually limited to occasional digestive discomfort in a small number of participants. Especially when compared to many pharmaceutical mood support options, researchers have been consistently impressed with how gentle saffron appears to be. That said, there are still a few important things to understand before working with it therapeutically. The most significant precaution would be pregnancy. In high amounts, generally well beyond culinary use, saffron can stimulate uterine contractions, and historically this property was intentionally used in folk medicine, which is why small culinary amounts are considered safe, while concentrated supplementation during pregnancy is generally not recommended. And because saffron may naturally help lower blood pressure, it's important to use caution if you're already taking medications designed to do the same thing. Saffron also has mild calming properties, which means it may amplify the effects of sedatives or other nervous system depressants in some people. And finally, dosage matters. The amounts used therapeutically are very small, measured in milligrams, not spoonfuls. Extremely high doses, far beyond normal use, can become toxic and cause serious symptoms. So, as always, this podcast is meant to be educational, historical, and experiential, not personal medical advice. If you're pregnant, managing a health condition, or taking medications, it's always smart to speak with a qualified healthcare provider before working with saffron therapeutically. What we see in saffron is one of the most extraordinary convergences in all of botanical medicine, a spice that was used as currency, worshipped as sacred, traded across empires, and turns out to be, by rigorous modern measurement, a genuine multi-pathway antidepressant. The ancients didn't have clinical trials, but they had 4,000 years of careful collective observation, and they got it right. Now, let's step back out of the lab and into the light to talk about how you can actually bring this gold into your everyday life. Before we talk preparation, we need to talk about sourcing, because with saffron, quality matters enormously, and the market is full of adulteration. Genuine saffron threads should be deep red, almost burgundy, with slightly lighter orange tips. They should be dry and brittle, not soft or pliable. When you place a single thread in warm water, it should release a slow bloom of golden color over several minutes. Not immediately, not in a brilliant burst. That gradual unfurling of color is the real thing. You should beware of saffron that is uniformly orange or yellow. This is often dyed safflower or marigold petals, which have no medicinal value. The cheapest saffron is rarely real saffron. Iran produces the majority of the world's supply, and Spanish saffron is also well regarded. Look for whole threads rather than powder, and buy from reputable sources. A small amount goes a long way. A pinch, 12 to 15 threads, is plenty for culinary use. And for therapeutic purposes, the dosing used in clinical trials is 30 milligrams of standardized extract per day, which in thread form is difficult to measure precisely, which is why supplements may be more reliable for consistent therapeutic dosing. The key to working with saffron threads in any preparation is blooming, a step that's simple, essential, and genuinely beautiful to watch. Take your threads, a small pinch, about 12 to 15, and place them in a tablespoon or two of warm water. Not hot or boiling water, just warm, around 60 to 70 degrees Celsius. Let them rest for 15 to 20 minutes. And watch the color unfurl. That slow bloom of gold into the water is the bioactive carotenoids, crocin, releasing from the threads into the liquid. This is where the medicine lives. This is the gold that you're after. Once your saffron has bloomed, add the entire preparation, liquid and threads, to whatever you're making, and never discard the soaking water. For a simple medicinal preparation, saffron tea is your gateway. Bloom your threads as I described earlier, and once the water has turned deep gold, pour it into a small cup. You can add honey, a slice of fresh ginger, or a pinch of cardamom, a small amount of rose water if you have it. All of these are traditional companions that deepen both the flavor and the medicine. Drink it slowly in the evening when the weight of the day needs somewhere to go. And if dairy sits well with you, try the Ayurvedic preparation of saffron in warm milk, often called golden milk when paired with turmeric. Bloom your threads in a tablespoon of warm milk first. Then add to a cup full of heated milk with a small amount of honey and a pinch of cardamom. This is one of the oldest and most beloved nighttime preparations in the Ayurvedic tradition, given to women with menstrual pain, to people navigating grief, to anyone whose spirit needs warming from the inside. One of the things I find most beautiful about saffron is that it's one of the very few herbs where the culinary dose and the therapeutic dose overlap meaningfully. A pinch of saffron in a pot of rice isn't just seasoning. It is, in a real sense, medicine delivered through pleasure, through community, through the dinner table. When you bloom saffron and add it to a dish you're cooking for people you love, you're continuing a tradition that goes back to the Persian royal courts, to Minoan women gathering crocus at dawn, to 4,000 years of human understanding that this plant belongs in the center of things, not in the margins. For a more concentrated preparation, saffron can be tinctured the same way as other herbs, packed loosely into a jar and covered with 80 proof vodka, left to infuse for 4 to 6 weeks and then strained. However, for consistent therapeutic dosing, particularly for depression or PMS, a standardized commercial extract is going to be more reliable than a home tincture, because the concentration of crocin and saffronol varies significantly between batches and storage conditions. The clinical dose of 30 milligrams per day is best achieved through tested, standardized supplements. I've linked some trusted sources in the project notes if you'd like to explore this further. My first experience with saffron wasn't through food or herbal medicine. It was through the flowers. Crocus blooms growing quietly in the front yard of my home. Every year, those vivid purple flowers would appear almost suddenly, pushing up through the cold earth as winter began to loosen its grip. They were often one of the very first signs that the seasons were shifting again, that warmth and color were slowly returning back to the world. And there was something about them that always felt a little magical to me, delicate but resilient, bright against the grayness of late winter. And at the time, I didn't fully understand their connection to saffron. I just loved them for their beauty. Later, someone I loved prepared a dish of saffron rice for me, and I remember being struck by how unmistakable it was. The color, the aroma, the richness of it. Saffron doesn't really fade into the background of a dish. It changes the atmosphere completely. And over time, I began noticing that same feeling in other places too. These days, one of my favorite ways to experience saffron is through fragrance, especially candles infused with the warm, resinous scent. There's something deeply sensual about it. Not overpowering, but golden, comforting, almost luminous. It really transforms a room in the same way candlelight does, quietly but completely. And maybe that's the part of saffron's particular magic. It has a way of making ordinary moments feel a little more sacred, a little more intentional, like a reminder that beauty itself can be medicinal, that even in the middle of everyday life, there are still opportunities to pause, to breathe, and to notice the richness of being here at all. And maybe that's the truest thing about this plant. It doesn't manufacture emotion. It restores what was already there. The light that went dim, the warmth that went quiet. Saffron, it seems, always has known how to bring those back. And so, After cave paintings and Persian courts and clinical trials and a small glass of blooming gold, we arrive, as we always do, at integration. Let's open up the apothecary cabinet. Inside today, the most expensive, most ancient, most studied spice as medicine in human history. Saffron is the mood lifter. In randomized controlled trials, 30 milligrams of saffron daily has performed comparably to fluoxetine for mild to moderate depression, with a fraction of the side effects. Its multi-pathway action on serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, and cortisol makes it one of the most pharmacologically complete botanical antidepressants known. Saffron is the cycle soother. Clinical evidence supports saffron's ability to significantly reduce PMS symptoms and menstrual cramping, a use that traditional healers in Persia, India, and beyond have documented for millennia. Saffron is the heart's friend. As a cardioprotective agent, saffron's compounds protect the cardiovascular system from oxidative damage, lower blood pressure gently, and support healthy cholesterol metabolism. Saffron is the mind nourisher. Early research shows saffron protecting cognitive function and memory, with promise in populations with mild cognitive impairment. Saffron is the golden thread. More than any other herb in this apothecary, saffron carries the weight of human history. It's been sacred, traded, sung about, fought over, and given as a gift between cultures for 4,000 years. That alone is worth honoring. And here's your homework for this week. Find a small vial of quality saffron threads. I've linked some trusted sources in the project notes. Take a pinch, place it in 2 tablespoons of warm water, and wait. Watch what happens as the gold unfurls. Notice the scent. Then pour it into something warm, tea, milk, a simple rice dish, and let this plant feed you in the way it has been feeding humans for thousands of years. The links in the project notes are affiliate links, and those gently support the Green Room Apothecary, and it's a simple way to keep this garden growing at no extra cost to you. And the full bibliography for today's episode is in the project notes as well. Until next time, keep your roots deep and your leaves reaching for the sun. Stay wild and stay well.